Should trans girls who are biological boys be able to compete against girls in athletics? That is the big question we focus on this episode of the Utah Stories program. Thanks for joining me. My name's Rich Markosian. So this is a huge topic of debate, and we are getting into more of these issues that, as I describe, are on the tip of the spear of societal evolution in Utah. You probably haven't thought much about this or haven't focused on it much if you're like me. But if you have a little girl in your life, as I do, I have a little girl who's 4 years old. She has an older brother who's 5.5, but they are only 2 pounds apart. One of them's 35 pounds, one's 33. My little boy is way faster than my little girl. My little boy is way stronger than my little girl. And to think that my little boy could one day become a girl and compete against her, and that would be cool, I'm sorry, that's where I draw the line, and I start this conversation with stating my obvious bias and my obvious opinion, which is biological boys should never compete against biological girls. All right, but before I get to that, I want to tell you about Canyon Meadows grass-fed beef. I highly suggest you go out to CMR Beef, www.cmrbeef.com/Utah Stories, and go out and order some steaks. If you want delicious, nutritious, great for the environment, hormone-free, antibiotic-free, wonderful beef, nutritionally dense, go check them out. I seriously love this product. I eat it every couple of days. I have beef. And beef has been, I guess, a bit attacked. Beef has been criticized. Beyond Beef has nothing on authentic, real, delicious beef where the cows have spent their entire lives in the pastures. Go check them out. They have a special discount for Utah Stories listeners and watchers. They'll give you 10% off your total order, and they'll deliver it to you. So check them out, CMRB/Utah Stories, so that they know that we sent you. Okay, so very interesting debate. Why? Because it is absolutely critical that if you have a little girl or a little boy in your life and they one day might compete in athletics, they might be saddened like these two ladies were. These two ladies got up and spoke and said they never thought they would have to compete against biological males in athletics. They're both runners. They never thought or imagined they would have to be timing themselves with thinking that they might actually be competing against boys. They want to win in girls' sports. So why are we not protecting them? So I've done now some research into this, and the group that is fighting against the protection of girls' sports is a very competent group, and they've done a lot for traditionally homosexuals. They've done a lot of work basically passing and getting legal victories, trying to make more rights for homosexual people in Utah. And a lot of what they've done is good. In 2001, they formed a political action committee. They then became the political action committee became Equality Utah. They passed legislation that was in response to Proposition 8, banning discrimination in housing and employment based on sexual orientation and gender identity. That's great. Then they lobbied for the passage of LGBTQ non-discrimination ordinances in 16 Utah counties. That's great. Proms, so that LGBTQ people would be able to go to the prom. They got Harvey Milk Boulevard. A lot of great victories, but now it seems that they're fighting almost exclusively for trans people. I'm kind of scratching my head. Like, what's up with this now initiative to go from homosexual to trans? And the way I understand it is every organization such as this, that's a political action committee, I think they eventually run out of fights. Like, everybody wants equality for homosexual people. But then they've run out of fights, and so now they're saying that any kid who decides he wants to be, say it's a boy, decides he wants to be a girl, and whether that boy has had his penis removed or had drug therapy, if he feels like a girl, he should be able to compete against the girls. And every bit of my common sense tells me that is wrong. That girls' athletics needs to be preserved. So let's listen how the executive president of Equality Utah describes this fight. Here he is. This is Troy. I went
Utah.
to school.
Thanks
with
for
this guy.
tuning in. Today's a day that we've been expecting for a while, and we've got concerns. House Bill 302 has dropped from Representative Kira Birkeland, and this legislation is harsh. It is a total ban on transgender youth participating in sports. Specifically, the bill discriminates against transgender girls, and it is a blatant violation of NCAA policies. And if this bill were to pass, it would likely bring Utah universities into conflict with the NCAA. Further, this bill was written in isolation of the LGBTQ community. Transgender Utahns were not consulted in the drafting. Equality Utah was not consulted. This legislation violates the very spirit of the Utah way, which brings stakeholders together to solve complex problems. That's not what's happening with this bill. And look, we know where this bill comes from. It is the product of the Alliance Defending Freedom, the ironic name. They are a vicious anti-LGBTQ organization that has been attacking our community for decades. And they failed in their campaigns against...
Okay, so Kira Birkeland is the sponsor of the bill. Want to show you Kira. That's her. She is an advocate for women's athletics, right? She's the sponsor. Then Troy, Mr. Williams, wants to say that the bill originated from a group called Alliance for Freedom. Then he immediately begins to call them anti-LGBTQ, anti-trans, transphobic, and then this litany of labels because of Mrs. Birkeland's assertion that she wants to protect girls' athletics. So that's the tactic they're taking. Anybody who wants to protect athletics now is anti-trans. So because you are for pro-girl and pro-athletics and pro-competition and keeping the athletics of girls as fair and as fun as possible, you then become an anti-trans person? Seriously? I mean, I just don't like the way in which they're arguing their points. So I don't know much about the Alliance for Freedom. I haven't studied them. They're a national group. But I do know about facts, and that's really where I like to report from. I like to report from facts. And the fact is, biological boys are much, much different than biological girls. And I pulled up the NCAA language of how it is they were able to say that it would violate their policies if we don't allow trans girls, biological boys, to compete in girls' athletics. And I find this disturbing. So first of all, it points out, this is the NCAA page. I'll share this link with you. So it points out how the concern is about creating an unfair competitive advantage, and these concerns are not well-founded. These concerns are based on three assumptions. And this one I don't agree with. One, that a transgender women are not real women. No, I would say I'm not arguing that they're not real women. What I'm arguing is that they have an X and a Y chromosome. They are biological males. So therefore, they're not deserving of an equal competitive opportunity. No, they do deserve it, but they'd have to open up a new category for them. that being born with a male body automatically gives a transgender woman an unfair advantage when competing against non-transgender women. And 3, that men might be tempted to pretend to be transgender in order to compete in competition with women. These assumptions are not well founded. First, the decision to transition from one gender to the other to align one's external gender presentation with one's internal sense of gender identity is a deeply significant and difficult choice that is made only after careful consideration and for the most compelling of reasons. Okay, I don't want to go into why people transition. That's another subject. But I do want to go into the biological differences of boys and girls and point out there's enormous amounts of differences, and they can never be extinguished through hormone therapy or surgical therapy. First of all, boys' biology is different. This is a site, this is Stanford School.asu. This is Arizona State University. I just found it. How boys and girls' brains are different. Boys' brains are 10% larger, just like their organs are larger, their hearts are larger, their kidneys are larger, their lungs are larger. They are heavier and taller. Their bodies are bigger. They have greater bone density. They have greater muscle mass. And there's just all sorts of differences. And to say those differences are negligible, no, that's not true. 10% is an enormous difference. So the other question is, and this goes back to the other bill that was introduced that would basically eliminate the ability for minors to transition into the sex of their choice, which I absolutely oppose as well, because minors are not of the mental capacity or of the wherewithal to make decisions like that if it's a good idea for them to make those decisions. So here's a study I pulled up from Psych Post. I don't think this is at all biased in any way, but how many transgender kids grow up and stay trans? I think it's a very good question. So they basically have a bunch of studies, and they just follow these transgender kids, and how many of them want to remain the gender that they transition into. Out of a 2013 study, which followed 127 transgender kids, 47 of them said they were still transgender. 56, the majority of them, said they were no longer transgender, that they were confused, and they said that they didn't want to be that opposite sex that they transitioned into. So to start down the pathway of giving trans people all of these opportunities or inclusion into athletics gives them encouragement to transition. So the NCAA site said that that people would transition just so they can be more competitive. That's a false assertion, that would never happen. I completely disagree with that. I think boys who are unable to compete in boys' athletics, who are perhaps homosexual, who are perhaps told or, I don't know, teased, which I saw happen when I was growing up, effeminate boys being teased, to have this wonderful opportunity to compete in girls' athletics, that wouldn't be viewed as an opportunity? Absolutely it would, and absolutely that would happen. And so for Utah to make a stand, just like Idaho did, and say, no, we're not going to allow it. Girls are girls, boys are boys, and we are not going to have boys compete in girls' athletics. I think the same stand Utah needs to make. We are about protecting our families, protecting our children. This bill would protect our children, and I think it absolutely needs to pass. And I know conversation will continue about it, and it'll go on in the next legislative session. But I think as a nonpartisan person who basically just wants to follow truth and logic and reason, that's where I stand on this issue. And that's what this podcast is really all about. So if you want to support this show, please share this podcast with a friend, like it, subscribe to the channel on YouTube, if you will, hit the bell notification icon so you know when our new content comes out. Or if you want to be a bigger part of the program, go subscribe to our digital newsletter that we send free of charge once a week with all our new, great, awesome content with our team of writers. Go visit utahstories.com to do that. And and I'll see you next time. Thanks so much for watching. I appreciate your support, and we will be reading comments, and we will be examining the big growth of the housing in downtown Salt Lake City and the affordable housing issue in our next episode. So I hope you'll tune in for that one. Thanks for watching. See you next time.